Greetings, it's an honor to be with you today. And today the topic is Caesarea Philippi, their words and your reaction. That's right. This is part 2 of the Caesarea Philippi video series. The first one was Caesarea Philippi, the place of revelation. This one is Caesarea Philippi, their words and your reaction. Matthew 16 verses 21 to 24 rather. It says, "For that from that time forth began Jesus to show unto his disciples how that he must go unto Jerusalem and suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and be raised again the third day. Then Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, Be it far from thee, Lord, this shall not be unto thee. But he turned and said unto Peter, Get thee behind me, Satan, thou art an offense unto me, for thou servest not the things that be of God, but those that be of men. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Now, normally you would hear me quote in so many messages that very verse 24. "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me." Now, let's look at this account, because Jesus has already stamped and approved the revelation of Peter that he got from God, that he is the Christ, the Son of the living God. Upon that revelation, Jesus begins to build his church. And you may be saying, wow, that's right, think about it. He says, upon this rock, if you read a couple of verses earlier in Matthew 16, after he says, "Flesh and blood are not revealed unto you, but my Father which is in heaven, the gates of hell are not going to prevail against the church." And he says, upon this rock, I'm going to build my church. And then he says, the gates of hell shall not prevail. So he begins to build his church, because he then begins to give them kingdom entitlement. Whatever you bind on earth is bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth is loose in heaven. So the church now is getting the kingdom mandate by way of the disciples. They had it before we did. So he begins to set things in order. But now, Peter, that was once in faith, when he hears about the cross of Christ, he begins to get fearful and speaks from fear. And Jesus had to rebuke him, because he understood now that that which was faith in Peter has now become fear. And often that is like us. When God gives us a mini revelation, the sweet revelation, we can call that, we love that, and we jump and prance and we do all kind of things. But when he begins to give us the meat revelation, because the first one was like the milk, when he begins to give us the core stuff, which includes suffering, because Jesus tells us, okay, I got to go to suffer so that this testament can be fulfilled. That caused some fear, because naturally we don't want to suffer. We don't want to go through trials and test it. But when Jesus begins to tell them, this is the process, this is the route that I'm going to have to take so that the glory can come to the church, Peter begins to rebuke him and say, no, Jesus, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, that's not going to happen to you. And Jesus had to rebuke that spirit. So when Jesus says, "Get thee behind me, Satan," he was speaking to the spirit that was now speaking to Peter. Because he understood that Satan can cause us to be susceptible to our lusts and our desires. And you may say, how does this tie in? Understand that the Jews expected a natural deliverance. This is something that they look for. So in them looking for the Savior or the Messiah to come, they were expecting liberation from the Romans. But Jesus did not come for physical liberation. Rather, he came for spiritual liberation that would eventually bring about physical, because all things are the core spirit. So when he heard that Jesus was actually going to basically be submitted to the cross, or to his cross. I don't know if he had an epiphany or revelation understanding that if Jesus goes to the cross, he would have to go too. He kicked up against it. And Jesus had to rebuke him and say, "Get thee behind me, Satan." And he puts a seal on it by causing his disciples to understand something. If you're going to come after me, you've got to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Now, the topic is their words and your reaction. Quite often, when we face opposition for our destiny, oftentimes, if we're not careful, we can allow their words to cause us to abort mission. If we go early on in the passage, when the revelation was being given, Jesus' question initially was, "Whom do men say that I am?" When the disciples, so first of all, let me not skirt over that. He inquired on whom men were saying that he was. So think about that. And to even bring it closer to home, he inquired on who the disciples said he was. So he wanted to hear their words. He wanted to know what people's perspective or understanding of him was. He wanted to know if they had the revelation. Come to find out, Peter had the revelation, which he shared with all of them. So everybody now had this revelation that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of the living God. Now, how does that graduate? How do we graduate from there? Jesus didn't allow their words to sink him or to cause him to rise. He just wanted to know where they were. He just wanted to know what was happening in their mental space. He wanted to know if they had the revelation that he was the one. Now, in response to that, we're going to either flow in the things of God, or we're going to flow in the things of the flesh. And you may have thought, maybe if Jesus had left it at, "Upon this rock I'm going to build my church, the gates of hell shall not prevail," we wouldn't have been able to get this big, grand picture of what's really the heart and the intention of the Jews. Because like I said, they were expecting natural liberation. And we can tie that in with us today. Sometimes we come to God because we are expecting a bed of roses and easy street. But I make no mistake in telling you that if we're going to come after him, we've got to take up our cross. We've got to deny ourselves first and foremost. Deny your will and your agenda. God ain't come for your purpose and your agenda. He came for his purpose and his agenda. All right, so let's get that out of the way. You've got to take up your cross and follow him. So I want to challenge you today. There are going to be many words that are going to be levied against your destiny. But what are you going to do with it? Because the same words or the same ones that praise you today, they are prepared to crucify you tomorrow. So can you imagine now, when Jesus heard what the Jews were saying he was, Jeremiah, Elias, one of the prophets, he was unmoved by that because he had already predetermined, I'm not going to fall for I'm not going to rise for their praises, and I'm not going to fall for their disdain. He already predetermined that he was going to Calvary regardless, because when he came into Jerusalem on that donkey and that colt, they sang Hosanna. Blessed is the name of the Lord. Blessed he that comes in the name of the Lord. But shortly after that, those same ones said, crucify him. So we've got to have a made up mind that once we've received the revelation of who Jesus is, we're going to allow that revelation to take us all the way. So I challenge you today. You need a revelation of Jesus. When the world turns dark and even those around you turn away, you stay fixated on the plan of God for your life.